As of this taping, LeBron James has led the Miami Heat to the NBA Finals for the second straight year. He is one of the players who has been very successful in the NBA, who decided to forego all or part of college and enter the NBA straight out of high school. His decision-making process is probably similar to the one that you use when you decided to take this class online rather than taking it on campus. In Chapter 2, we're going to think about the decision-making process. We're going to define and give examples of opportunity costs, talk about implicit and explicit costs, think about marginal analysis and rational decision-making, and also talk about investment. The three fundamental questions of economics are, first, what goods and services are produced? How are the goods produced? And for whom are the goods and services produced? What goods and services are produced? In a market economy such as ours, instead of decision-making being centralized, the power to decide what gets produced ultimately belongs to the consumers. Economists call this consumer sovereignty. That is, consumers vote with their dollars. One of the things that has happened in our lifetime is the transformation of how music is delivered, from record albums to cassette tapes to CDs, and now to MP3s and other electronic formats. Was it the record companies that decided to get rid of CDs and make you buy things digitally? Doesn't seem so. It seems that consumers have decided that they prefer the digital formats to the CDs. This message is transmitted through the market mechanism to producers, and they respond in kind by decreasing the production of CDs and increasing the production of MP3s. How are goods and services produced? What kind of technology is used for production? In our country, one of the things that you may hear is that manufacturing has fallen a great deal over the past few years, and that manufacturing jobs are being outsourced to China. The data, however, doesn't back this up. Manufacturing has changed in our country. There are indeed fewer manufacturing jobs than there were 50 years ago. But the change in manufacturing is due to increases in technology. We've changed from manufacturing processes that are very labor-intensive to ones that are more capital-intensive. So the production or assembly of an automobile that used to have dozens of workers lined up along an assembly line now may only have a dozen workers at a time on the floor, making sure that the large investments in capital, the robots who actually produce the cars, are doing their jobs well. So who are the goods and services produced for? How do we allocate output and income once the things are produced? These are all things that are decided through market mechanisms and the pricing mechanism that we'll talk about later on. So what are opportunity costs, and how do they lead to decisions like high school players going straight to the NBA or people choosing to take a class online rather than on the ground? Opportunity costs are what we give up when we make a choice. Anytime we make a choice, we are foregoing one thing when we choose the other. So if we think about LeBron James's choice to go straight to the NBA, when he chooses the NBA, he foregoes college. That means he gives up college education. College would have been free, right? Not exactly. LeBron James had a contract offer that would pay him $20 million or so to play basketball for 1 year. If he had chosen to go to college, he would have had to forego $20 million. That means that free college scholarship would have given him tuition and books, but he would have had to give up $20 million. Therefore, the opportunity cost would have been $20 million for the first year alone. $80 million over 4 years seems pretty steep for a college education. Similarly, you're probably taking this class online because you have a job that you work during the day. If you were to come to campus to take the class, you would have to take time off of work, which would be costly. Not that you would have to pay your employer, but you'd have to give up the money that you could have earned in your day job. When we think about marginal analysis, we're referring to the change in cost compared to the change in benefits when we make a decision. More on marginal analysis later on. Production possibilities shows the trade-off when resources are used in different purposes. If we look at the next slide, we'll see that this economy has been broken up into two kinds of goods. On the vertical axis shows the output of military goods that are possible given all the resources and technology in the economy in a given year. So point A shows an important point, and that is all the resources in the economy are used to produce military goods. Then 160 billion units of military goods can be produced. Alternatively, point D shows the output, the maximum possible output of consumer goods. If all the resources and technology in the economy are used in the production of consumer goods, then we can produce 100 billion units per year. Now imagine that you're the king or the queen of the economy in this picture. You may choose point A, but it's probably not going to be a good choice. If you use all the resources in your economy for the production of military goods, you have a very strong military, but you can probably expect an uprising from all the people in your economy that are very poor. Alternatively, if we choose point D, then we're using all the resources in our economy for consumer goods and no military goods, then you can likely expect an invasion from an adjacent kingdom. So probably we'll end up somewhere in the middle where we are producing some military goods and some consumer goods. The green line that goes through points A, B, C, and D is called the production possibilities curve, and it shows all the points that can be produced given the current levels of resources and technology in the economy. We can't produce more like point Z, even though we'd like to. We'd be better off with more military goods and more consumer goods. That's not an option for us. Point U is inefficient because it implies that there are some resources that are unemployed. That is, we could produce there, but we'd have some land, labor, and capital that aren't being used. So points B and C are more likely candidates to be where our economy ends up. We can also note that the production possibilities curve is curved. It's flatter at the top and steeper as we move down from the left to the right. This is because of the increasing opportunity cost of production. When we decide to make this choice, produce more consumer goods and forego military goods, the opportunity cost of this changeover is not constant. Things are less interchangeable, and it becomes more expensive to shift resources from the production of military goods to the production of consumption goods. One of the things that we learned during World War II was kind of moving the other way on the production possibilities curve, was that at the very first, when we wanted more military goods and we had to give up some consumption goods for that, we used the assembly lines that were assembling automobiles to produce things like tanks and jeeps and things that would be used for the war effort. Changing assembly lines for automobiles was a very inexpensive trade-off. When we tried to change the production in shipyards, it was a very much more expensive operation to go from producing consumer ships to producing battleships. If we think back to the point that was point Z on our graph on the previous slide, the one we called an unattainable point, we said that we would be better off on point Z than on any other point on our production possibilities curve. But it wasn't available to us with our current level of resources and technology. But changes in resources and technology are possible. This is what we refer to as economic growth, and it can happen in a number of ways. We say economic growth come through increases in the labor force, population growth. We see economic growth through discoveries of new resources. If we were to discover oil, or new innovations in production, technology can all shift the curve outward, and a curve that wasn't a production possibilities combination that wasn't possible in the past can become possible with these increases in resources or technology. Thank you. You should do your homework quiz for Chapter 2.